This episode of Popcorn Poops is brought to you by Audible.com. Please visit audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for a 30-day trial of their audiobook subscription service. When you sign up, you'll even receive a free audiobook that's yours to keep whether or not you continue with Audible after your trial has expired. That's audibletrial.com/popcornpoops for your free audiobook.
We are the Popcorn Poops. Welcome to Popcorn Poops, the best married couple movie podcast / commentary track hybrid audio program on the internet. My name is Dustin, and with me as always is my wife, Jessica. Say hello, Jessica.
Hello, Jessica.
How are you doing? Have you had a good week?
Yeah, busy.
I've been very busy with work. Not a whole lot in movie-related things to discuss.
Well, you hold a camera.
I do hold a camera and I do edit a lot, but that really has nothing to do with movies, and I don't think our listeners would be very interested in the kind of video related work that I do.
Well, they definitely wouldn't be interested in listening to me summarize my text for Theory and Criticism this week.
Well, I can barely stand it, so just kidding. I'm so interested. As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. You can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Of course, we are a podcast, so subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, and please sign up on our forums. We got some good discussions going on over there. You can go join those discussions. We talk about movies, and there's even a place for you not to talk about movies, for you to talk about other things other than movies, maybe theory and crit.
Oh, yeah.
And also maybe what I do.
If someone wants to explain Kant to me, you can just go ahead.
Oh,
it's probably more productive than me bashing my head against the wall.
That
I don't know.
sounds like a lot of fun.
It's not.
Okay. This month, our theme on Popcorn Poops is listener request. It's our very first listener request month ever. And we've got a lot of great requests in. I want to take this moment right here to thank everybody who sent in a request.
Oh my gosh, we had so many great ones.
We had a lot of really great ones, and picking them was hard. Picking the 4 that we're going to do was very, very difficult. But I think what was harder was not picking the ones that we didn't get around to. So if we go through this month and you realize that the one that you put in was not chosen, I can't apologize enough. I'm so sorry, but we thank you so much for participating and putting those in. And who knows, we'll probably do another one of these down the road, and we'll just hang on to those voicemails that we didn't use.
Yeah.
And unless you want to send a new one our way, we might use those old ones. Who knows? So there's always that chance. So for this week, instead of announcing what the movie is that we're doing, we'll go ahead and just let the listener who requested it announce it. So here, let's take a listen.
Hi Popcorn Poops, my name is Amber and I'm from South Australia. My recommendation is the 1975 film Dog Day Afternoon. I chose to recommend this movie because it's one of my all-time favourites. I'm a huge Sidney Lumet fan. Another favourite is 12 Angry Men, and I feel that this film captures so much intensity, anxiety and drama within such small spaces. This film is on the surface quite political, but deep down I feel like it's much more of a personal story. I've had many discussions about Al Pacino's character Sonny, and what his real motivation for the bank robbery is. There are so many fascinating layers to this film, and I think it could provide some great discussion points. It's one of the first films of the 1970s that I saw, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt like I was being punched in the gut after watching it, in a good way. It's such a stressful, crazy film, and it also has some profound emotion to it. I felt I had to recommend it. Plus, Al Pacino is a sweaty, nerve-wracked god in this film, and how can you go wrong with that?
Thanks so much to Amber for sending that in. That's great. And so yes, as Amber said, we will be watching Sidney Lumet's 1975 film Dog Day Afternoon. Now, if you want to sync this movie up to the podcast that you're listening to and watch it along with us, you're going to want to pause the movie immediately after the Warner Brothers Pictures vanity card completely fades to black. Now, while you're setting that up, while you're doing that, I'm going to have Jessica read a review that we received on iTunes.
Okay, this review is titled Required Title. I like it.
Oh, that's kind of smart, isn't it?
Yeah, by X Flare Gun. Listened to 4 of their eps so far, 2 on their own and 2 synced with the movie, and they work either way. Whether they like the film or not, Dustin and Jessica have no problem offering insightful commentary on why the movie is or is not working, or sometimes works in spite of itself. They have the creative background to know the ins and outs of how to tell a story. They do their homework to be able to offer insight on how the film ended up the way it did. And they have the rapport to deliver it all in an engaging, fun way that makes the podcast seem to fly by despite being as long as the feature it's covering. Thank you. That's a very nice...
How many stars was that?
That was a 5-star.
What? My favorite kind.
5 stars are the best.
If you want to send in your own review, we would really appreciate it. I think that's actually, we've only received that one review since the last time where we were out of reviews. So guess what? We're out of reviews again.
Yes.
So if you submit a review this week, we will read it on next week's show, almost definitely, unless we get a whole bunch, and then we'll just read them in the order
And
that
that
we
would
got
be
them.
really
That
awesome,
would be amazing. So it's up to you. Please submit a review to us. It doesn't have to be a 5-star review, but we really like
5-star reviews.
So by now you should have the movie all synced up and ready to go if you plan on syncing. So syncers, press play at the beat after the countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And we are off with Sidney Lumet's 1975 film, Dog Day Afternoon. Now,
why you picked this? So, I mean, it was a great recording. Like, the recording for why we should pick it was great, but and we did say that the reason we would base our choices on would be like the reason that the listeners provided. But is there like a personal reason for you? I mean, that's part of it, but also why? I mean, because this isn't one. Regardless of how great her
voicemail was, Amber's voicemail was great, and she gave some really good reasons for why we need to talk about this.
There's a lot to talk about with this movie. It wouldn't have been one that I picked because it wasn't a movie I had ever seen before, and
I don't have a lot of history with. I wouldn't call it history with this movie, but in college I was part of a project in one of my video production and directing class. I think it was actually directing for the camera. We had to recreate a scene from a movie that was a 2-person dialogue scene, and we had to, videotape it and edit it and produce it as we would a scene in, a much longer project. But we had to recreate it in our own, style. And the group that I was with, the little, so-called video production crew, that it was just me and my friends, really. And if you're interested, we went by the name the Super Sentai Video Rock Stars.
Yeah, you did.
We certainly did. And we made some stuff. We had a lot of fun, and we basically ended up working on each other's projects. And this wasn't my project, but one of my friends from college and a guy in that group of friends chose one of the scenes from this movie. And I'll bring it up when the scene comes up. But yeah, we worked on that. So that was the first time that I watched the movie because, I wanted to watch the movie and get an idea of what the movie was before we went out and did this scene. And yeah, it was a great experience, and I've been a fan of the movie ever since. It hasn't been since then that I've seen this though. Okay, so it had been a while then. It has. Look at that old Dan and Yogurt truck. I love looking at old logos for companies. Right? Don't you? Why? What is that? There's got to be a word for that. Like a psychological. Well, I mean, it's associated to like nostalgia and stuff, I'm sure. Oh yeah, nostalgia. That's probably the word. I thought this opening scene though, after we get the information where it says what you're about to see is true. It happened in Brooklyn, New York on August 22nd, 1972. After that, we dive into like this montage of New York City, and it just feels like I already said the word, but it feels like nostalgia city, like New York City. Like this is like, I feel like we're watching the opening to some sitcom that was filmed in 1970s, except it's like a really, really long opening where it's just like shot after shot after shot of cliche New York City. Be honest, is it the song though? The song is totally doing it. Okay, too. So the song, and I'm not criticizing it in a bad way. I'm just saying that was the feeling that I got from it. The song actually that plays over the opening is the only music that's in the entire movie, aside from a couple of incidental things like the Looney Tunes theme pops up at one point, but there's no score to this film. There's no music at all. But that song at the beginning of the movie that just wrapped up is, of course, Amarina by Elton John. And I tried to glean some significance from the song, and the only thing that I could really think of, the only thing I could personally draw from that song playing at the beginning, is that Elton John is a gay man singing about a woman he is in love with. Perhaps maybe that's intended to parallel our main character Sonny, who is a gay man living a double life. Because that's one thing that I find interesting about Elton John's music career and the songs that he wrote with Bernie Taupin, is that they don't seem excessively personal. They don't seem like they're coming right from Elton John. They just seem like a guy that's singing songs written to be sung, right?
So this is me not knowing anything about Elton John, but was he out at that point? Was it known in 1975 that he was gay?
I should have looked that up. That's a really good question.
Because that would affect your theory.
I would say yes, because he's always dressed that way. Like the big glasses.
I don't know if that's...
Well, I mean, it's kind of the Liberace thing. Like Liberace was very much openly out, and Elton John was kind of performing in a very much post, like right after Liberace. I guess it was right after he died, maybe, or right after he became really famous. I'm not sure. I don't really know the history of Liberace, but Liberace was very much like an openly gay man, and I think that Elton John kind of followed that mold in his career. So I would say that yes, he probably was out. But then again, glam rock and that whole thing, I guess from there, you also had people like David Bowie. And of course, David Bowie is another figure from this time period that everyone was, his sexuality was pretty ambiguous, I think. And, that was argued.
I just looked it up.
Okay, well, what's the answer?
He came out as bisexual in an interview with Rolling Stone magazine in 1976. So that would have been the year after this movie
I
came
think
out?
that makes that even more interesting, that song is playing over this movie.
But it would mean, though, however, that they did not choose this song intentionally because of Elton John in any way being homosexual.
So retroactively, there's some meaning that you can attach
retroactively,
to it.
Yeah. But
I don't think that's invalid, though.
No, it's not invalid. I think it's almost more interesting because then it's like, wow, by happenstance, this situation kind of parallels the situation
I know for
of
a
the
fact.
singer.
What I was talking about is the meaning that I gleaned from the song, because I know for a fact that Dee Dee Allen, who's the editor, placed this at the beginning of the movie because the opening scenes were shot without sound. There was no soundtrack, no natural sound, so to speak, for those shots. So the editor put the song on there to have something to edit to give it a kind of rhythm, to give it a kind of flow, I guess. And after the sequence was cut, the song was taken out, and then Sidney Lumet said that he missed the song, that he wanted the song, and so he bought the rights to it and put it back into his movie. So it is kind of interesting that you can get some kind of meaning out of it after the fact.
Yeah. It is interesting. I love how he is a mess right from the start. Like he is a mess from the start of the
He holds
bank
it
robbery.
together for about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Not even. Like just when he's standing there talking to the kid.
And of course we're talking about Al Pacino playing the character of Sonny. What's his last name in this movie?
I don't even know.
Workitz or something like that?
I looked up his last name. I don't think they ever say his last name in the movie. I know his last name in reality, like the character he's based off of, if that's what you're talking about.
Yes, of course. And this is like we see at the beginning of the movie.
Not character he's based on.
He's based on a real person.
The person who he's based off of.
Based on real events. At the beginning of the movie, we get a title card that says, "What you're about to see is true. It happened in Brooklyn, New York on August 22nd, 1972. And this is based largely on the real life story of John. What's the I know you looked up the pronunciation.
John Stanley Wojtowicz.
Wojtowicz. Okay, John Stanley Wojtowicz. And on August 22nd, 1972, as it says at the beginning, he and Salvatore Naturale. I'm not sure the
I
pronunciation
didn't look up the
on these.
pronunciation for him.
Attempted to rob a branch of the Chase Manhattan Bank, and I think in this movie it's the First Brooklyn Savings Bank or something like that. But they attempted to rob the Chase Manhattan Bank on the corner of East 3rd Street and Avenue P in Brooklyn. They held 9 bank employees hostage for over 14 hours, and Voidovich, you said? Voidovich, is that right? Was trying to get money for his lover, Ernest Aaron, to have a sex change operation. Now, Naturale, who would be Sal in this movie, was killed in the standoff, and Voidovich received 20 years in a federal penitentiary. Voidovich was paid $7,500 plus 1% of the net movie profits for the movie rights and his story. He gave $2,500 to Aaron to have the operation. Aaron had the surgery and changed her last name to Liz Eden, and then she subsequently died of AIDS in 1987. And Voidovich was released from prison after having served 5 years of his 20-year sentence, and then he died of cancer in 2006.
So that's the real story.
Yes.
And I mean, actually, it's not surface level. It's really not that different from the events of the movie.
It's not. It really isn't. Like you watch the movie and you're like, okay,
that's pretty much how it
happened.
Now later, after we get into this a bit, because I won't say there are lulls in this movie. When I was watching it, it was the first time for me that I had ever watched it. By the way, I love how much he knows about banking because he was a bank teller.
He just used a line here where he says, "Get your mind right," which was a line that is used a lot in the movie Cool Hand Luke, which was also written by Frank Pearson, who wrote this movie as well. But go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Anyways.
Please forgive me.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because I was like already on a tangent.
Oh,
and
no.
Now
I'm
double
sorry.
Tangented me
God, I'm so
and now
sorry.
I'm trying to remember where I originally started. We will eventually get back to talking about the real things that happen, like in consequence of this movie. There's a famous letter and stuff that the real Voidovich tried to get published in the New York Times, where he talks about his reaction to the movie, and we'll talk about some of that. What I was saying is we'll talk about that when there are some lulls in the movie.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is not that the movie is slow, but there are moments where we're just kind of like when I was taking notes and I was just like, I don't even know what to say because it's like this movie is like one long scene is how it feels.
It does. It feels like kind of like a one-act play.
At times, yeah.
I think that this does feel very theatrical, which is appropriate coming from Sidney Lumet, who as a director has at least 3 masterpieces under his belt. Like I would say that this is a masterpiece of this genre, that this kind of epitomizes the bank robbery, the heist movie, the kind of claustrophobic, tense movie about guys who are really, really out of their element, doing something desperate, something out of desperation, really. But Sidney Lumet, of course, also directed 12 Angry Men, which is, very, very theatrical. In fact, it may be based on a play. I should know that.
It's not a movie I've seen either.
Oh, it's brilliant. 12 Angry Men, of course, and then Network, which Network I would say is...
Is Network the one... Oh, I'm going to make an idiot out of myself. I haven't.
That's okay.
I also haven't
seen it. You can say it.
Is that the one with the really famous speech in it?
Mad as Hell.
Yeah, where
Yes.
He's bringing down like media and stuff like that.
Yes, he's go to your windows, open the windows, and
Yeah.
scream, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." Yeah, it's a brilliant movie.
Yeah,
So
I've seen clips from it.
Sidney
of
Lumet,
course.
he's got like 3 masterpieces under his belt, if not more. I mean, he was still directing the hell out of movies he died, I guess, in 2007, 6 or 7, something like that, I think. And the last movie he did was, I think it was Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, which is an amazing movie. Also starring the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. I know he died in 2011. And what was his last movie before The Devil Knows You're Dead? I am using the internet as we speak. Yes, it was. His last movie was in 2007, and it was Before The Devil Knows You're Dead, and that was a really good movie.
Man, the internet makes it so that you can never tell whether or not anybody actually knows anything.
Unless you're just honest about it and you tell everybody what you're doing.
For the record, you often do just know the useless movie trivia that you
I do. I rarely.
spout.
Yeah, I mean, my head's full of stuff that's not useful for anything but this kind of thing right here.
Yeah.
But I guess
I'm aware.
I don't look stuff up in the middle of the show very often, do I?
No, you don't.
The beginning of this movie, I did want to mention. I mentioned Frank Pearson, who was the screenwriter on this, and he was unable to. He won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay but he was unable to pick it up because he was filming the A Star Is Born remake, which would have been the second remake of A Star Is Born. I think we've mentioned A Star Is Born on the show before. The cast and the crew stopped filming briefly to go for a quick drink at a nearby bar, and then it was straight back to work. And interestingly, the same film, A Star Is Born, probably not that film, but one of the previous iterations, is featured on the marquee during the opening scenes of this movie.
Oh, that is interesting.
We don't know it at that point, but Sonny's wife comes out of a theater where on the marquee it says A Star Is Born, which is likely the first remake starring Judy Garland.
Where's the mess up here? Is it here? Is it this moment with the smoke that's the mess
Where
up?
he burns the register? It could be.
Because in the movie here, like, things, I know they're kind of taking their time and they're a little slow, and even the manager at one point, he's like, I told you to go and you didn't go and now it's too late. And so, like, I know they're kind of doing this a little slower than they should because he's trying to do it right, but where is the moment that they mess up? Is it this? Is it the smoke coming outside? Does this lawyer guy call the cops?
The insurance guy?
Yeah, not lawyer, insurance guy.
I think he does. I think that's
he sees the smoke coming out of the building and he calls the cops.
Yeah, I think that's probably what happens. Because, Sonny, of course, Sonny makes mention, he says something about having worked in a bank before.
Yeah, he was a bank teller.
He said he was a bank teller before, which is why he knows about, like, the little things, like the different ways in which bank tellers can set off the alarms, like the bill that's in the register that can trigger the alarm if you pull it. So he has a trick to, like, put a piece of paper under there and pull the bill out from under the piece of paper, and how you don't use this certain key on the vault because if you use this certain key, it'll trigger the alarm and all this kind of stuff. So he seems to know a lot about, like, how banks operate because he was a bank teller at one point. I think he does say that, doesn't he?
Say it. He does. And then here's the moment when the ladies are getting locked into the vault, where if you didn't realize it before and now you realize that not only is he the worst kind of person to be doing this, for himself, because he cares too much about people. He's going to be a character that we're going to feel sympathetic for the entire movie because he actually cares about the people. Whereas we can take it from Sal that maybe he doesn't, that maybe I don't know if it's that he doesn't care about them at all, but he's estranged from them deeply. And Sonny cares too much about them, and he's worried about them not being able to go to the bathroom when they're locked in the vault.
That's really interesting that you say that, because early in the writing proceedings, Frank Pearson considered dropping out of the project because he had already, but because he didn't know where to take this, he didn't know where the movie was. Like he was suffering from writer's block in this, but he had already spent his advance. He had already spent the money that he had been paid, his advance money to write this thing.
Script.
So he was struggling to find his hook, and he discovered while researching the story of Sonny Voitovich that everyone who knew him had a contradictory story about the man, but the one thing that they all agreed on, that Sonny was always saying this thing, quote, "I'll take care of you, I'll make you happy," end quote. And then Pearson then knew that he had found his way into the story because of Sonny as an empath,
Right.
So that's really interesting that you say that. Then that is Sonny's biggest virtue, and considering the situation that
his biggest flaw too.
Yeah, his biggest flaw considering this context.
Right. Well,
right?
I mean, for him, it's his flaw in the sense that it's the reason why he's gonna go to jail. If you're trying to be a bank robber and you care about whether or not the people you're locking in the vault have to go to the bathroom before you lock them in the vault, then you're probably not going to make it out of the, robbing the bank. So yeah, it was that moment where we kind of realized that was the angle that we were going with this character, and that ultimately this is going to be watching him fall apart.
Right.
And
it is kind of a spiral down.
It is a
for
spiral.
Him. He kind of falls apart psychologically.
Before we're too far away from it, is this the movie that started the whole gift wrapped gun rifle.
I don't know, like the gun in the rose box.
Yes, yeah.
Well, it
Is
definitely
that where this started?
It definitely comes up. The only other movie that I can think, I know I've seen it in other stuff, but the thing I can think of off the top of my head is Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Right.
T2,
T2.
Judgment Day.
T2.
When the T-800 definitely carries around a shotgun in a rose box. Maybe?
But I mean, it's been used so many times since then. So many. I mean, it's one of those things that like they do even in, TV shows and stuff where they're like, oh, robbery. And then how do they get it into well, we're just going to put it in a box, gift box, put a bow on it.
Well, the great ones, the really great ones are like in NT2 when he pulls it out and there's also flowers in there. So flowers go everywhere as he pulls this gun
of course.
out.
But I was wondering if maybe this was the first time.
It might have been. I don't know. Someone long ago had that idea and used it in earnest, like in real life.
I really like her earrings.
Oh,
Sorry.
wow, that's an interesting thing to notice.
I would totally
that woman
wear
that
those.
you just noticed though, the actress's name is Penelope Allen, and she is here on the screen left, and she plays the blonde chief bank teller. She was actually something of a surrogate mother to Al Pacino.
Really?
When he first left home in his teens to pursue acting, he lived with Allen and her husband for several years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting that they wound up being in the same. I mean, I'm sure it's not a coincidence.
It probably has. Yeah, I'm sure one recommended the other for the job or something like that.
Was Al Pacino famous at this point? Was he already super famous?
Yeah, he had been in The Godfather. Godfather Part 2, actually. He had already done The Godfather Part 2.
And you know what? And I'm sure, again, this is not...
Carol Kane. Oh, I love Carol Kane.
Young.
She is so young in this. And she's just amazing. Yeah, if you didn't know that Carol Kane is in this movie, Carol Kane's in this movie, and that is one of like 1,000 reasons that you should watch this at least once before you die.
To see her,
she doesn't have enough to do.
No,
for being
she
as
doesn't.
Awesome
but
as she
but
is.
I mean, she is playing, I guess, of the women here, the most like eccentric, like the strangest of the women. He
calls her Squirrel.
Yeah.
He calls her the Squirrel because she's she looks mousy. She's got she's got
talking to her husband on the phone about telling him that he can just go ahead and cook whatever's in the kitchen already, and
because she's in the middle of a bank robbery and she doesn't know when she's going to be
right
home.
And he's asking her when she's going to be back, like after he knows that she's in the middle of a bank robbery. It's almost a comic role.
Well, there's quite a lot of comedy in this. And we
is.
just passed a line that Pacino delivers where he says, "What a comedy." And I think it's actually quite meta, especially early on in this movie. I think that a lot of the fumbling around and them kind of trying to find their legs in starting this robbery and them running around kind of like with chickens with their heads cut off, it does seem kind of farcical. There is a lot of comedy in this, and there is some comedy throughout, but I think the last half of the movie is much more serious.
Yeah, it gets a lot darker.
Especially like when the lights go out. I feel like the lights going out...
It literally gets a lot darker.
It literally gets a lot darker. The lights go out, it literally and figuratively gets darker. But I do feel like I'm probably way off on this, but it feels like that lights on, lights off marks the halfway point.
Yeah, it does feel like
movie.
that, whether or not that is the case. I think it probably is closer to the end than
it probably is
than you think. But
all of this, I mean, this, I've spent a little time already talking about Frank Pearson's writing of the script, but the script was kind of I don't know. I guess it ended up being secondary to the performances in this movie because through rehearsals, they would rehearse from the script that Pearson wrote, and then whatever they improvised during rehearsals became the new script. And then on set, I'm sure that I know that they improvised a lot of what they do, and this movie feels like it.
It does. It feels, which I think at times, for me personally, at times that's a great thing, and at times it kind of wears on me. That whole fast talking, like natural sounding style that I think was popular this time during like the 70s, because they do it in some TV shows and stuff around this time too. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I guess there are moments in this movie where people are having a conversation and they keep having the conversation and they keep having the conversation, and you sit there for 2-3 minutes straight and you come out of the conversation and you're like, okay, I learned one thing, like one piece of information. We did something, because all dialogue, all good, well-written dialogue should in some way enhance the character or move along the plot.
Sure,
or,
where every line is important.
Right.
Right.
And so, and I'm not saying that every single line, because a line of dialogue can be important just for characterization. It can be important just for setting the scene, the dialect, the region, whatever it is that you're trying to do. But
you can't say that the performances in this movie and the dialogue in this movie exhibits the traits of economy of language.
Right. And
in fact, you sacrifice that for
Yes,
the
you do.
naturalistic, improvisation, the improvised sounding dialogue.
We finish these scenes where we have done something in the dialogue. The dialogue got us to a point where we can move the plot forward, where we learned a piece of information or something like that then the plot can move forward. The action continues because of the dialogue. So the dialogue did its thing, but we had to sit through like 3 or 4 minutes of dialogue for that to happen. And that's a long time. So there are moments in this movie where I'm just like, okay, guys, what are we talking about? Why are we still talking about this? And we're just talking around it because it is improv. And again, like, it is natural. It sounds real.
It does
sound like real people talking.
I think it allows Pacino to give one of the greatest performances of his career. And this will get me crucified, but I've never been the biggest Al Pacino fan. Like, I know he's like legendary top 10 American actors of all time kind of thing. Like, that's what you hear about him and his legacy. But I've never found him to be particularly great at anything but being kind of a loud Italian American. Like, he's really good at that. Sometimes
maybe that's
once
the point,
once a Cuban American, but like, I don't know, like I feel like he plays that character, and he's milked it a lot in his career. And when he steps outside of that, I don't know, maybe I just haven't seen the performance that proves me wrong, but I've seen all of the performances of his that people, cite as, oh, this is great Pacino. This is the great Pacino that makes him the actor that we all remember him as. And I've seen all those performances, and they're all like, okay, they're fine. I mean, he's good. He deserves the accolades that are thrown at him for what they are. But like, all-time best, when I think of like an actor,
do you wish, when you see these cameras that they're wearing, do you wish that was like the kind of camera that you had to carry around today?
Oh God, no. Oh my God!
Look at those packs.
They look like fucking Ghostbusters.
They do look like Ghostbusters. Sorry, go ahead.
No, not at all.
Keep saying
but
something
yeah, just about Al Pacino. Like, when I think of like great actors that disappear into their roles, when I think of my favorite actors of all time, I think of like Daniel Day-Lewis, right? Daniel Day-Lewis is just, I mean, I seriously think he might be the greatest actor that's ever lived. I think that's possible. Right?
In your opinion?
In my opinion, I think that he may be the greatest actor that's ever lived. But then again, like, other people that might make it into my personal top 10 best actors of all time are people like Jeff Goldblum, who just they just Goldblum every time.
I know,
it's gold.
it is. It's
solid.
Gold. It's
Goldblum.
solid Goldblum.
So I don't know, what the fuck do I know, right? Like, I would put Daniel Day-Lewis and Jeff Goldblum right next to each other. So that's sacrilege in and of itself, I know. But,
I don't think so.
But anyway, no, Al Pacino is great in this. And this was when he was in his prime. And
well, I mean, I'm gonna forget her name already. Amber, was it, who gave us this suggestion?
Yes.
Yeah, Amber, from Australia. My favorite line in
South Australia, she said.
South Australia.
South Australia.
My favorite line in her voicemail was, Al Pacino is a sweaty, nerve-wracked god in this film.
Yes.
And I think that's totally true.
He's definitely sweaty.
He is really sweaty in this movie.
And definitely nerve-wracked, for sure.
But you're saying that, like, as a god, like, Al Pacino, just for you, like, he's the same level of god that, like, he usually is for you, which is like this performance, do you think this is like his best performance out of the ones you've seen?
I mean, it's among the best that I've ever seen. Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's right up there at the very top. It's right up there with, Corleone, Michael Corleone. It's right up there with Serpico, even Tony Montana. I don't love Scarface as a movie, but I think he's great in it. But again, like he manages to do scenery chewing really, really deftly. He walks a line between like showing up and showing up the actors around him and showing off and trying to, act circles around everybody, and actually delivering a naturalistic performance that is believable, right? In the context of whatever he's doing. But he does have this proclivity. He has these proclivities toward yelling and, really like bringing a theatricality to his performances that I feel like he would be. I know that he was a stage actor at one point. I know that after this movie, he returned to stage acting for a time because he was a method actor. So when he got into character, if you don't know anything about the method process, look it up. I'm not going to explain it here, but when he got into character, he really fucking got into character. So after doing, the Godfather films and this basically back to back to back, he wanted to return to stage acting and kind of give himself a break from the intensity that he was bringing. But I feel like his brand of film intensity is more suited for the stage because he is really over the top and he does kind of tend to chew the scenery. And I don't know, I feel like film is a medium for the subtle, right?
Most of the time.
Because of the way cameras can move right up into, a performer's face and capture all of those little tiny, subtleties. Right?
Well, I mean, you can tell when an actor's on camera and they're a stage actor and they're not a film actor. Like in, Sleepaway Camp?
Yeah.
Right? And we really bashed on some of the acting in that movie.
It's a weird movie to bring up right now. But
but that's what popped in my head because I'm picturing the mom in that movie who is clearly a stage actress. And she's just like even just the way she's projecting her voice and stuff, you just sit there. And I guess I bring it up because it's such an obvious, like, laughable example of it to the point where it's comical. But yeah, you can tell even when it's more subtle than that. Oh, this scene, this starts the movie's political tone, I think, scene right here.
Well, he's already mentioned Attica, which we'll come back to.
Yeah,
but I feel like this is the first, like, staunchly political statement that the movie is making. What the detective here says later is that the reason that they try to arrest the security guard when he comes out, the reason for that is that you told me on the phone that you had nothing but women in there. So when you send a man out, what am I to expect? What do you think I'm supposed to think?
Right.
But there was no question to me as soon as he came out and they started trying to arrest him and there was just chaos there for a minute. I read it as an assumption on the police's part that the security guard was one of the robbers, not because he was a man, but because he's black. Mm-hmm.
Right. No, that's absolutely how I read it too.
Yeah, it's definitely, they profiled him. They racially profiled the man walking out of the bank as, oh, well, he's got to be one of the bank robbers, right?
It is unbelievable how relevant this movie still is in America today.
It's sad how relevant it still is today.
Yeah, well,
I mean, basically everything that it has to say is still relevant.
Yeah, like pretty much every single issue that they hit on in this movie is still, I mean, today, this week, really, really relevant. And this was the first beat that we hit the racial profiling. And, I mean, they put the hostage in cuffs. They've got him in cuffs, And just that image right there of that happening. And the only reason that they wind up taking the gun off his head is because the white woman is screaming at them that he's a hostage.
Right.
And then finally someone comes over and fixes the mess up. But yeah, this is
Pacino using the white handkerchief here every time he comes out of the bank is actually something that I heard Voitovich had an issue with. He took issue with that because he said that every time he came out of the bank, he never he never would have had a white handkerchief because to him that's a sign of giving up, and he never gave up.
I think it's interesting how Voitovich took a lot of issue with a few things that I'll talk about later.
Course he
but
did.
I think it's interesting how, as you watch the movie progress, the handkerchief gets bloodier and bloodier.
Yeah. Wow. That is. I didn't actually notice that, but now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah. I mean, I say bloodier and bloodier, and it does kind of hit like a maximum bloody point. It doesn't get any bloodier from there, but like it definitely goes from being
absolute red, if you will.
Yeah, we never hit that. But it definitely goes from being just a white handkerchief that he's using to something that's stained. You know, that he's not going to come out of this. I think it's the symbolism of he's not coming out of this clean. That it's stained. It's over. It's not going to wash out, I guess. You want to talk about Attica?
We can. This is basically the scene. This is the scene. Really.
I love that line, by the way, when he says "kiss me" and he's like, "What? Kiss me? When I'm being fucked, I like to be kissed on the mouth." It's nice.
It's pretty great.
It's a nice line. Okay, so he's about to start the chant, which is, as I understand, the famous chant from this movie. Like I said, I didn't know much about this movie before we watched it, and that kind of became the cultural cry of the 70s after this movie came out. But Attica, he's screaming. And Attica, of course, is referring to the prison riot in 1971 in New York, which was not so far away from when this movie came out, and was even closer to when the actual robbery took place in 72. Mm-hmm. So the prison, basically, it was meant to originally hold about 1,200 people. And at the time of the riot, it was holding more than 2,200 prisoners.
Right.
Because largely transfers and increases due to the peak of the race wars in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So 54% of the inmates were black, and all the corrections officers were white, and a large majority of them were openly racist, and there was a lot of brutality and beatings and stuff going on in the prison. And the prisoners rioted, and they took over the prison and demanded better treatment, things like not being beaten. And stuff like that.
They demanded rights. They demanded better living conditions. They, basic things that human beings should have, whether or not they're in a correctional facility.
And the guy, I forgot to take down his name, but the guy who was kind of like their voice. They had a few people who were the leaders of it. They were very well organized, apparently. And the guy who was like the voice of them was really eloquent and well spoken, and there are some famous speeches and stuff based off of things he said. And he mysteriously got shot during the
takeover
and stuff. And
I mean, at the end of it, it was like as I understand, it was like a 4-day ordeal. Where they worked through, their demands and all this kind of stuff, and they got some of their demands.
They got their demands met, but they never were able to meet with Rockefeller.
They did. No, they did. Which is an interesting thing, because that kind of parallels another thing in this movie where he has a conversation with, what's the detective's name?
Moretti.
Moretti played by Charles Durning, who's wonderful in this. Actually, he's wonderful in everything. I think my favorite performance of his is "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" But anyway, he has a conversation with Durning, and he at one point he's like, "Why am I talking to you? Why don't I talk to your superiors or something like that?" And he says, "Bring the guy above you down here. Why do I have to talk to you if you've got to go ask somebody else? Bring that person down there." And that person never shows up. Right.
Of course, he does talk to the FBI agents later.
He does talk to the FBI, but naturally there's going to be someone above
them, right?
Yeah,
of
exactly.
Course.
So that's interesting that they I don't know if it was intentional, but they kind of managed to parallel.
I love this moment too. Before we pass it, when she refuses to leave and she goes back in to stay with her girls, as she says.
She's really good in this too.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, so he never gets to talk to the person above.
Right. So because the FBI is not necessarily directly above Charles Durning's character. He's not. They're not above Moretti's character. He's got to talk to like his police chief or whatever, right? So it kind of mirrors that same situation where Governor Rockefeller never ended up showing up at Attica prison.
Right.
Even though they demanded that he come so that they could talk to him about their demands. And they didn't get all of their demands. One of their demands was amnesty from
from the riot.
From the riot itself.
Yeah.
And they didn't
they
fucking
didn't
get that. But at the end of the ordeal, I think it was, he said in the movie, he says that 42 people were killed, but it was 43 in real life.
It was 43, yeah.
Yeah, it was 10 officers and
33.
And 33 inmates.
Yeah. But Rockefeller never did. Governor Rockefeller never did show up. This happened, I think I already said it, but this happened in New York too. So this is all like New York social history, the whole and cultural upheaval and stuff. But yeah, the guy who was like the really eloquent speaker who has, like I said, some famous speeches and stuff during that time, inmates reported seeing him shot in the back and gunned down and he was unarmed and stuff. So yeah, it was definitely this major political event that was going on TV, and there are statements from the ones who survived claiming that the prisoners vowed to protect the hostages who survived claimed that the prisoners were vowing to protect them with their lives from the police or from hostile inmates, and in some cases did just that. And the media tried to cover up the fact that some of the hostages died or sustained injuries because of the police. They downplayed things, saying people had just been knocked unconscious when in fact they'd been shot. There's this one hostage's account, which I think parallels the scene we just had where the guard was handcuffed and stuff. And one of the hostages' account is he's shot. First he's shot by the police officers, and then he's laying there, and a cop comes over and has a gun at his head, and he's about to be killed by the cop until finally someone keeps shouting that he's one of the hostages, that he's not an inmate, and it saves his life. Mm-hmm. But so it's really, I think that was like a direct parallel to that scene.
Like
we
all
just
of the
had.
stuff that they're talking about now, like, they're bringing in, I feel like it's intentional. It's absolutely intentional that there are no police officers. There are no officers in uniform that really get any speaking lines at all, except for maybe the guy at the end he's not even in uniform. He's disguised, the guy who brings the limo up, the airport shuttle. Mm-hmm. But none of the police officers become characters in this movie because they are seen as a force as a whole. They are. Right. It is. A statement about police officers, and the statement they're making is about police officers and police brutality, and excess force and all that kind of stuff. Stuff that is still very relevant and things that we're still talking about today, obviously. But listening to him chant Attica and seeing how that comes out and how that riles up the crowd, and the crowd almost immediately is on his side. As soon as he says that, they're like, yeah, we're pissed off, we're with you. Yeah. And all the cops are out there, and you've got the cops out there, and the media is not a good guy in this film either. In this universe, the media is a bad guy, because you've got the cops out there pointing their guns toward the bank, and then you pan over to the media, all the news outlets, and you've got all those guys pointing their cameras and pointing their microphones. Those are their weapons. Yeah. They're just like the guns. Yeah. They're in the same position that the police officers are in.
They're making people look like what they want them to look like to serve their needs. Now, I think it's also unfair because, I mean, when you look at it, you're looking at the cops that are out here, and they are trying to. I mean, this is a robbery with hostages.
Yeah,
right?
They're trying to do their job. Yes.
And so you look at that and you see how convoluted this issue is, and you see the way the people react to it so violently. I mean, it's just paralleling today. It's such a perfect movie for right now. There are these signs on the counters right here that I keep looking at that say, make your vacation dreams a reality.
I was going to say something about that.
It's got to be something like a reference to them trying to leave.
It's totally intentional. They are constantly surrounded in this bank, in this really claustrophobic, this hot space. And you can see the heat. Mm-hmm. It's even shot in such a way that when you see outside from the inside, there's like a blue tint on everything through the windows, making the outside, which is supposed to be hotter than the inside that's, theoretically air conditioned. We find out later that the air conditioning in this bank is broken, which is
Or
telling.
gets turned off.
Or gets turned
intentionally
off
as a way to sweat them out, literally.
But the outside visually looks cooler. You look at the outside from the bank, from this claustrophobic, this hot space, this stuffy space inside the bank, and the outside looks like the more comfortable place to be, right? And it's even in the title. In the title, Dog Day Afternoon. The dog days of summer are the hottest, the most sweltering days of the year, like right at the tail end of summer, right before it starts to cool off again. Because, I mean, we're in them right now. Like, it's the hottest days of the year before it starts to finally cool off.
But interesting that he's talking about right now. He's talking about going somewhere that doesn't have snow.
They're surrounded by these, and that is interesting. They're surrounded by sailboats, like signs that have sailboats on them and signs that say, turn your vacation dreams into a reality. And, in this, eventually they're going to come to talk about their demands and what they want. And they want this jet and they want to get out of here. And he says, fuck the snow. We want to get to a place where it's not cold, but it's obviously really hot right now. Like, the cold is on his mind, even though it's, it's hot in this bank and it's a hot summer day. I don't know. It's all of that is really interesting to me. This is an interesting exchange right here, where he asks Sal where he wants to go, like where he would fly to if he could.
What country
he would fly to, and Sal says Wyoming. That was actually improvised.
Yeah.
And Al Pacino didn't know that he was going to say Wyoming. Which, props to Al Pacino for holding it together, because that is a hilarious answer.
But then I think the even more important moment of that scene is him asking Sal who he wants to call, who he wants to say goodbye to, and he says nobody.
Yeah, he doesn't have anybody. He's uneducated, clearly.
But I think that's also diving into one of the other issues in this film, which is the treatment of veterans. We're coming out of the Vietnam War and stuff, and we've got these two guys who are Vietnam vets and who can't get a job.
There was no support system.
And I mean, this has got to be one of the first movies that's really dealing with that, right? When did Rambo come out? Was that
80s.
In the 80s? So
yeah, but you're right. Like, it was early 80s, but First Blood, the first one, not the sequels, but First Blood does deal with the same things. It does deal with, a Vietnam War vet coming back and not finding the support system he needs to deal with the things that he's been
rash.
through. Yeah.
And so this has got to be one of the first movies that's really openly, at least one of the first ones that got really famous. So we've got these two Vietnam vets who they don't have a place in society anymore. And so they look to doing something crazy. Now, I guess Sonny does have some kind of place, which he's found in the people that are around him. He still has some sort of a family to go to and stuff.
A couple of them, actually.
A couple families to go to. But Sal doesn't. And I think Sal is the character that we should maybe we should feel worse for, not only because that he dies, but because he is the saddest one in this story. He's the one who...
He's something of an enigma, too, and I think that comes from his real life, counterpart, because...
He was only 18 in real life.
He was only 18 in real life, and not much was known about him aside from his extensive criminal history, of which was pretty long. As far as I know, Voinovich didn't have much of a criminal record before this whole thing, but Naturale did. And he was only 18 years old at the time.
How was he actually a veteran then in real life?
Not Naturale, no.
Oh, okay.
But Voinovich was.
Okay. But both characters are in the movie. The characters they have created are both veterans.
Yeah,
there's been some dispute of that online, but
this is just me probably just reading it wrong, but I think that we're supposed to believe that he was actually that Sonny was a veteran, but when he says it, when he tells the police that they were Vietnam vets and they don't have a problem killing people, it sounded like like he was lying. Like it was just
Yeah.
something that he would say based on his idea of what, someone who having been to Vietnam would be.
But I think that's him saying it because he's not the kind of guy that, would kill somebody. Just because he's a Vietnam vet doesn't mean necessarily that he was in conflict, that he was
in combat. Yeah, no,
right.
You're right.
My grandfather served in the Navy for his entire life and never once fired a gun at a human being. So it's totally possible that, he could have been a vet but had some sort of clerical capacity in the war or something like that.
Sure.
Because it is hard to picture his character as
And that could be what I'm reading
people.
into the performance. But yeah, when he says that to me, something rings really false about it. And I think the thing, obviously, right off the top, is that he does not have the capacity to kill anyone. But there's a moment, the moment when Sal calls Sonny over and he says, you told me that there was a chance that we would have to kill somebody or that we might have to kill people or whatever. And you see he's nervous and he's kind of shaking, and you expect him to say, I can't do it. And what he says is, I'm ready to do it.
Yeah,
and
that moment
it's
is
heavy
powerful.
as fuck. It is super heavy.
Well, I think that that Sonny doesn't realize that either. I think that when they have that exchange right there that you're talking about, which is pretty far back too, toward the beginning of the movie, where they have the exchange, I think Sonny is also expecting him to be because Sal is the one who brings it up, and he's like, are you really that stuff you said about killing people and stuff? Do you really mean that? And Sonny's just like, oh, well, I just got to say what I got to say and whatever. And you expect, I think us and Sonny both expect Sal to be like, oh, okay, good, because I don't think I can kill anybody. But what Sal says instead is that,
right?
I'm going to kill somebody.
And I think the scene is set up for us to expect him to say that he can't do it, and because we're expecting that, when he says that he's ready for it, it hits
hard,
twice as hard.
Yeah,
it's pretty heavy.
It hits hard. And the thing is having this be the first time I saw this movie, I sat here thinking the whole time that somebody was going to die because of Sal. I was surprised in the end that nobody did.
I think this actress that plays Sonny's wife handles the improvisation the worst of anybody in the movie. I think it seems like she's improvising. It seems like she's just, I don't know, something about the way she shushes her child, like she picks up her child and puts the child down and shushes her child and keeps talking.
And picks up the child again.
Yeah, it just feels like you're just trying to keep busy because you don't know how else to make this work. And I don't know, I don't think she does a very good job. But yeah, I think that she's actually Voitovich had something to say about that, didn't he?
About his wife?
About the
portrayal of his wife in the movie? Yeah, that was one of his... That was probably his biggest issue with the movie, was that he felt like the actress was not a correct portrayal of his wife, that his wife was a beautiful woman and... Well, I mean, I just have to read from the letter he wrote. He called the actress in the movie an ugly, greasy-looking woman with a big mouth, which is awful and says a lot to his character as a human being. But yeah, however, though, regardless of his nasty way of phrasing that about the actress, I do understand where he's coming from when he talks about the portrayal of his wife in the movie, because his big issue was that this movie frames it, and we're going to get to there soon, it frames it as though he's gay because of his wife.
Right, because
it's her fault that he's gay.
that she's shrill and overbearing,
overweight.
And maybe overweight.
Well, I don't think maybe. I think they say it specifically because the wife later comments on her weight and about how she's never turned him down for sex, but maybe he doesn't want to have sex with her because she's overweight. And his mom comments on her appearance, her physical appearance, and says that, I know, in so many words, she says, I know you don't want to have sex with her because she's overweight. Like, they comment on it multiple times in the movie. If anything, I don't think that I appreciate how the movie handles that.
Yeah, I don't really like how she's handled as a character.
I'm not convinced that the women in this movie in general are handled very well.
I'm with you right there, and that's something that's disappointing, because of all of the things that this movie is trying to say. Oh, by the way, this shot right here, before his head sticks out, the shot right there was our hint for this episode, and nobody got it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's
nobody
the first
got it.
time ever that nobody got?
No, also last week or 2 weeks ago when we did Sinister, nobody got that either, but I didn't mention it.
Oh. Wow.
Yep.
Surprising. After so many weeks of just like getting it like the moment you post it.
And no one's going to get the one for next week because we're already recording this episode. We're going to announce next week's movie at the end of this episode, and no one's got the one for next week either. So that's 3 movies in a row that no one's been able to guess the hint. I said I was going to make them harder.
Popcorn poopers.
I know.
You gotta...
Pooplings.
Get
it right.
You gotta... Not get it right, just... I mean...
Anyway.
Oh, yeah, get it right.
I do think it's disappointing in this movie that has so many political things to say, so many statements that it wants to make about like the socio-political zeitgeist of 1975 and what was happening around this time. And it's got such a great view, a great point of view of history and, you know, what these people have been dealing with, what America has been dealing with. I feel like this cements this, along with like Network and 12 Angry Men, like I mentioned before, kind of cements Sidney Lumet as maybe the greatest American filmmaker who made movies about America that maybe has ever lived, right?
Well, I mean...
It's a big statement. But all of those things that they're trying to say about, let's list them off. Police brutality.
Media exploitation.
Media sensationalization.
Homosexual discrimination.
Yeah, LGBT issues.
The discredited plight of the veteran.
Yeah, absolutely. Disenfranchisement of the veteran, the disenfranchisement of the middle class, of the average person.
Transgender profiling.
Yeah, racial profiling.
Or not profile, phobia is what I wanted to say. With
transphobia, yeah,
issues.
Absolutely. Racial profiling, of all of the things that it makes statements on, especially for this being the era of women's lib.
And the 70s are recognized as women's lib. Like that is what it's recognized
this
for.
This movie, like the cast of this movie is full of, it's got like 8 women in this cast who are all holed up in this bank with him, who have great opportunities for character development and growth. And basically none of them get that. I know the names of maybe 3 of the women in this movie.
Yeah. Maybe
3. Because they're all just kind of cardboard cutouts that shriek and scream and stand in the background and kind of just all act the same.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I won't say they all act exactly
Not
the same.
Exactly the same.
Jenny, I think
Jenny gets a little bit of characterization.
She's got a little bit of characterization.
Right.
I think the head teller has some characterization.
She gets some characterization.
But you're right.
One of them professes to be a Christian at one point, so that's something.
For the most part, though, they do kind of. We see them in the. There are key as to whether or not this is a calm, chill moment or a moment where it's tense, because either they're huddled in the corner,
mood setters,
being terrified, or they're like literally dancing, laughing, watching TV, chewing bubble gum. But yeah, I think it is a little disappointing that, and granted, one of my issues with this movie, and not really an issue, but just a comment that I have at one point, and we haven't hit it yet, it's when the media stuff starts really going.
Yeah.
Is I kind of get to this point where I'm like, are we trying to tackle too many issues, perhaps?
Mm-hmm.
So I do kind of hit that point with this movie.
There is, like, I feel like this is kind of a mix of a lot of things that Lumet has dealt with as a filmmaker, like a lot of different issues. Like there's a lot of 12 Angry Men in this. And even though Network came out a year later, I feel like this was just a taste of what was to come.
Right.
And Network, I feel, is like much more focused than this movie as far as like the message that it's trying to get out there.
Even the title.
It's about one thing, right? It's not one thing, but like it's contained within,
the scope
this one
of
idea, right?
This area, right? But so one of my comments is a better way to phrase it about this movie is, are we are we dealing with too many issues? Have we just gotten to the point where we're trying to handle so much that we're kind of losing the momentum of the singular issues because we're touching in so many places? And so for me to say that on one hand, and then on the other hand complain about this movie not addressing women's rights is silly. It's it's hypocritical
yeah.
of me to say that, but I feel like
contradictory. I don't know, hypocritical. It's contradictory.
Yeah, it's contradictory. But the fact remains that I can't get through this movie and look at how we've hit all these major beats in the 1970s, and we don't touch on women's lib when we've got a bank full of women. He repeatedly says it. He's like, all I've got here is women. All I've got here is women. I've got all these women in here. And it is literally a bank full of women during the smack middle of the 1970s. When you think of the 70s and
how do they treat the one female character in the movie that gets any kind of depth and character?
Very poorly.
Very poorly.
And even to the guy who the movie is based off of, he feels like that character was specifically handled poorly.
Yeah, and he's got a point.
He does.
Like, as I understand it, the letter that he wrote to the New York Times was so poorly written that they rejected it, even though he was super famous for
it was awful. I read it.
Oh, why?
Why did I read it? Because I was doing research, and I read the letter that he wrote. Some examples of, so stuff that it was like grammatically and just amateur.
Just all over the place.
It was like just super amateur. But he did applaud Al Pacino and Chris Sarandon's roles. Those were the two things that he
Chris Sarandon's really good in this. He does a
really
great job.
But I'll read just a short.
John Cazale as Sal is really good too. I think he does a great job in this, and he got the role because he's 39 when this was made. And he was supposed to be 18, but he was just so good that they cast him. It just
worked, yeah. I'll read just a short little excerpt from the letter so that you can hear him praise Al Pacino, and also you can hear how amateur the letter sounds. Al Pacino's performance has to be called out of sight and the best he's ever done. I feel he deserves the Academy Award for Best Male Actor for his unbelievable performance. For almost 2 hours, he was just fantastic. He made me laugh, cry, sweat, and feel uncomfortable at times all in one movie. His characterization was flawless. I mean, it's like...
It's like how hard can you suck your own dick?
Chris Sarandon, who portrays my male lover in the movie, also deserves the Academy Award for Best Male Supporting Actor.
Wow.
So, but yeah, anyways, though, the rejection letter itself is kind of funny too. They don't really comment on what they say the reason for. I mean, the reason they rejected it has to be just that it's a mess. Like, it's just a mess of an article. But they say that the reason that the article won't work for us is that the editor says he doesn't believe that he has profoundly come to grips with the motives for his crime and the complex relationship between art and reality in this instance.
Yeah, it's I think this moment here is really interesting too, where he's throwing money into the crowd, and then we've got people. I guess the police are getting trampled and people are getting arrested for trampling police, trying to take stolen money that's given to them by a bank robber. And like it also, I think it kind of interestingly mirrors an earlier scene where Maria is one of the girls inside the bank. Her boyfriend runs up and tackles Sonny and starts beating him up. And he's the one who gets arrested. Mm-hmm. And Sonny's on the ground. He could be taken by the cops. That's a perfect opportunity for them to just take Sonny in.
Right, but they don't want to take him in because Sal's still in there.
But right, Sal's still in there, and it's still dangerous for the girls. I understand that, but I don't know. It feels... It's interesting to me that the people who are ostensibly innocent are being taken in just because they're around. Like, it seems like they're being arrested just because they're there, because someone else is committing a crime. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it kind of feels like, is that they're not, what's the word, accessories to the crime necessarily, but just, I don't know. It's the worst kind of wrong place, wrong time, where it's like, you're here, so we're just going to take you. you tackled this criminal, but we're going to let him go and we're going to take you in instead. You took money that was given to you by a criminal in front of police, so we're going to take you in, but the criminal can continue to go free for the time being. I guess this moment right here where he's, I don't know what that's called. What is it called when you swing the gun around?
And you do the little gun dance.
I don't know what it is. The like a gun salute? Is that what it is?
I don't know.
I don't know.
We definitely are not up on our
well, neither
ROTC
one of us
terminology. So
ROTC. None of us have ever served in the military, so
or that.
Right. But I think that's the moment where we're supposed to see that Sonny has had some military training, that he knows something, of course, about what he's talking about. But again,
it's something superficial. It's something something for show, something that we don't necessarily associate with our veterans. We don't think of their ability to do the little dance where they kick the gun and spin it around and stuff. We think of them having to kill people. So anyways, this scene right here is interesting.
There's some irony here because, of course, John Cazale, who plays Sal, his character, I guess, chastises the chief bank teller for smoking during the situation. And he says that he doesn't smoke because he thinks that the body is the temple of the Lord. And even though he's robbing a bank, that he keeps his body pure and all this kind of stuff. There's an irony to that, of course, because John Cazale, he says in this movie, he doesn't want to get the cancer. He actually died of cancer 3 years after this.
Well, he didn't, but the other guy did. Sal doesn't die of cancer. Sal dies of being shot in the head.
No, the actor.
Oh, the actor dies of cancer.
John Cazale.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the
No.
real life guy.
No, the character of Sal in this says that he doesn't want to get the cancer because the temple's the body of the Lord. But the actor who plays Sal died of cancer 3 years after this. Yeah. He was in Godfather Part 1 and 2 with Al Pacino. They played brothers. He played, is it Fredo Corleone? Corleone?
Don't ask me. You aren't actually asking me, right?
You haven't seen the Godfather movies,
no.
have you? Mm-mm. Oh, no. We got to fix that.
I know. I've mentioned it a few times in the course of our
They're right over there on the
long
shelf.
relationship.
I can see them from here.
Can you see them?
Mm-hmm. Sure can.
I know, but also on the shelf is the entire Puppet Master collection.
And why watch some of the greatest movies ever made when you could watch Full Moon Entertainment pieces of shit?
You need to back up off the Puppet Masters.
So we've got, what do we got going on here? Leon has shown up. So Leon, played by Chris Sarandon, has shown up, and he's going to have a little chat with the police about his whole backstory. And it's, despite being an entire scene that is, it is just straight up exposition. It is just straight up Leon telling everything that the audience and the police officers need to know or want to know or should know. I don't know. It works despite all that. You know?
It does. I think but I think part of that is the way that this movie is kind of improv the whole way through. So we already buy it, you know? They've already set us up to believe that we're just talking like how people talk, and you believe that this is how people talk already. So when somebody just tells a whole story, they're sitting there being questioned by the police, so fine, we believe they tell a whole story. I want to mention something before I get too far away from it. They're the creep that calls and that says nasty things on the phone.
I have a theory about what
I have a theory too.
Okay, what's your theory?
I'm going to tell mine first because I brought it up.
All right, go for it.
Fine.
Don't get defensive.
I will.
All right.
So when the phone rings and we've got this voice that calls a couple times, the first time he calls, he says, "Kill them all now. Take your bayonet and jam it into there," and then it cuts off.
Ellipsis.
And then later he calls again and he says something like, "Are you doing anything to any of those girls in there?" And Sonny winds up passing the phone off to the girls, and they start laughing and listening and whatever, and they make a joke out of it. I know that it's a real person actually calling because, like I said, the girls listen in and they hear it and they respond to it.
But
right?
the first time it happens, I had that thought too. That it's like,
is this real or not?
Is this part of his breakdown?
Whether or not it is a real person, I think that it's a reference. It's a PTSD reference. I think that it's like his inner self kind of breaking down and stuff because of extreme violence in the past or something like that.
That's really close to what my theory is.
Okay, go ahead.
Now
I'll just sound like you stole it from me, but fine.
Well, no,
sure.
I feel like that it is like what I have written down. I feel like that it is a real person calling. I don't feel, although after the first one, I did think
the first one I thought
it was possible,
maybe it wasn't
right. But no, I think that I guess kind of metaphorically, it's kind of the id, if you will, of the American media viewer, of the one who watches, the live coverage of the bank robbery and
I think that's better than mine.
And the hostage situation. Really, you think so?
Yeah. I like that one
it's
better.
the viewer that watches the live coverage of the hostage situation and knows that these two men are locked inside this bank with, eight women, and the things that they're thinking is like, oh, why doesn't he just kill him? Why don't they kill him already? And it'll make for really good TV. Or, oh, wait, what is he doing? He's trapped in there with women. What are they doing? Do you think they're doing like dirty stuff in there? I think it's like that kind of...
Yeah, it's the rubbernecker. It's the same person that's leaning out their window trying to see the mutilated bodies after a car wreck.
It's a real kind of primal instinct kind of thing.
All those people who went online and looked up that video of the live murder and stuff that happened.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The videos of the guy, shooting that just happened like a week ago or something.
Yeah.
Shooting the newscasters.
Why do we do that? Why do we go look up those videos? I mean, there is some kind of primal... messed up part of us that is asking those questions.
Yeah, it's a morbid curiosity. So when they get those calls, I feel like that's not just a call from a person so much as it is a phone call from I don't know, like a psychological state.
Yeah. No, that's where I was going with it too, but I wasn't taking the media stance. I was taking like the Vietnam vet stance, but I like yours better.
Yeah, but yours is more personal. Maybe Amber, our listener, the one who recommended this movie for us.
Maybe she has an opinion.
And I think hers might fall in line with yours because it's much more personal.
Yeah, she discussed how she felt like this movie was more emotionally driven, character-driven than politically.
I mean, and she's right. She's definitely right that this is a very political movie that has, at its core, a broken guy. A broken guy. It's a very personal story. It's a personal story that's kind of wrapped in all of this socio-political stuff.
Well, I mean, all the stuff that's going on around him. Like at first when he's doing the Attica thing and people are responding positively to him and he's kind of like showboating and stuff, he responds to it that way in the beginning, but then I think he gets tired of it. And then when some of it becomes hostile, like when he starts to search the people who come in, like he searches the doctor and he searches the FBI agent, people start doing cat calls because at that point they know he's gay. And so it becomes hostile, and then the gay community comes and backs him up. And he doesn't respond positively to it.
Yeah.
I think he loses his...
He feels ashamed or something, or he knows that he's...
Or maybe that he realizes this isn't why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like, that's not his purpose. He's not here trying to make some political statement or movement or something like that. He was trying to use that to his advantage earlier. I mean, but now he just wants to survive
But his motivations behind this, like, it's spelled out in the movie why he's doing this. And the reason he's doing this is ultimately a very personal reason.
Right.
He's doing it for someone that he loves. And that's another interesting thing that you told me before we started recording, that Voitovich, one of the things that he took issue with this in this movie is that he felt like the movie did not get at the core of why he did the thing he did, and he did it so that his lover, Aaron, what's his full name? Ernest Aaron?
The real person was Ernest Aaron, later known as Elizabeth Debbie Eden.
That's right. So that Ernest Aaron could get the sex change operation.
Leon in the movie.
Right, Leon in the movie played by Chris Sarandon.
Well, in the letter that he wrote to the New York Times, and I guess you have to have robbed a bank or attempted to rob a bank to get a personalized non-format rejection letter from the New York Times. I'm going to guess that's how you do that.
Do I sense some writer bitterness?
It's cool, whatever.
Have you submitted to the New York Times?
Not to the New York Times, but to the New Yorker. So
Oh, okay.
it's cool. Nobody gets in. They've already picked them all.
Somebody does.
They've already picked them all for like the next 20 decades.
Okay.
Like, it's fine. Whatever. I'm not going to go rob a bank over it. Anyway, so he, in his letter that he wrote to them, he starts it off by saying that he thinks that the movie is only 30% accurate, an accurate portrayal.
Okay.
And he says that one of the biggest problems with the movie is that the movie didn't get right the reason for why he tried to rob the bank. And then in the next paragraph, he immediately goes into talking about his reason for robbing the bank and spelling out specifically that it was to get his lover a sex change because his lover had repeatedly attempted to commit suicide because he felt trapped inside his male body, even though he felt like he was a woman.
Right.
And that he was trying to save his lover's life by getting him the sex change.
I think that
I think the movie does a good job of describing that, of telling us that.
I would agree, and I think that Leon as a character, as a trans character, is handled shockingly well for 1975.
I think so too.
It's kind of shocking how well Leon is handled as a character, but there is an insinuation, I think, that I don't necessarily like, that I don't agree with, that Leon got the idea that he was actually a she from
a doctor.
From a doctor, yeah.
From a psychiatrist or
from
something like that.
From a psychiatrist who said, I think that you're actually trans. And then from that point on, Leon's like, I guess I'm trans.
Yeah, I don't think that's how most people come to it.
Probably not. I would imagine not.
Is that a doctor tells them?
No.
I also don't think that most people, as this movie insinuates, become gay or bisexual because their wife is overweight.
Right, and that is another somewhat dubious insinuation.
I know this movie doesn't straight out say that.
No, it doesn't. And I don't think it really intends to say that, but there is the insinuation that, I don't know, there are some kind of regressive ideas.
There are some lines in this movie, and again, you have to ride that space where you're trying to decide, are these lines out of the mouth of the character, or are they lines out of the mouth of the person who made the movie? And sometimes it's hard to tell in anything that you're reading or viewing. In this case, I don't know. I guess the problem is that we don't have any opposing view of women. We don't have anything to contradict what they're telling us.
Right.
We don't have any lines from Sonny where he's like, no, Mom, I've already been separated. Well, in reality, the Voidovich.
Yes, Voidovich.
Voidovich, in reality, he had been separated from his wife for 2 years already before he met Aaron, the character Leon in the movie. Mm-hmm. 2 years they'd been separated. There's no way to connect that.
Yeah, which is not mentioned in the movie, and the movie would rather have you believe that he is living a double life.
Yes. And, well, the movie leads us to believe that because they talk about it. I mean, his wife talks about being with him very, very recently and saying how he's been weird this summer and et cetera, et cetera. He's still living with them. He's living with them both. And people around him believe that the reason why he has a gay lover is because of his wife, whether that's because of their relationship or her appearance, her physical appearance, or whatever. They lead us to believe that it's because, and I mean, come on, she's an overbearing character. When she's on screen, the way she talks, they portray her as a not a likable character.
No, definitely not.
She's irritating. She's naggy. She never shuts up every time she's on screen. So
there's something that I wanted to talk about. It's a little bit of, it's trivia-ish, but I think it's interesting that there was kind of a, I don't know, like Al Pacino was kind of tied to, in a weird way, tied to the events that inspired the movie that he eventually ended up being in.
Yes, I meant to mention that, but now you're going to steal it from me. Go ahead.
So Voidovich actually had watched The Godfather to get ideas for his bank robbery, he watched it earlier in the day. He watched it that day.
The same day.
The same day that he robbed the bank. And then he went on to rob the bank that was then made into a movie, right? Starring both Al Pacino and John Cazale, who were both in The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. But then in the 1972, there was a Life magazine article that inspired this film, based on the true events, of course. And the Life magazine article described Voinovich as a, quote, dark, thin fellow with the broken-faced good looks of an Al Pacino or a Dustin Hoffman.
Wow.
So in 1972, The Godfather came out, and also the article, the Life magazine article, came out describing Voinovich as looking like Al Pacino or Dustin Hoffman. And he had actually watched The Godfather earlier in the day. Now, here's another level to it. Al Pacino initially had turned down this part because he had done The Godfather Part 2. He had done The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, and he was exhausted, like I said before, that he had, he's a method actor, so he really gets into his roles in a way that most actors don't, I think. And Lumet wanted him for the role, but agreed to let him go and say, okay, you don't have to be in it or whatever. And then he sent the script to Dustin Hoffman. And Pacino apparently changed his mind because he and Dustin Hoffman were kind of acting rivals during this period. And he decided to take the role when he heard that his rival was in the mix. He was like, okay, I'll do it. If Dustin Hoffman's going to do it, I'm going to do it. Right?
Right.
So it's kind of interesting that he was tied to this because of The Godfather, and then Dustin Hoffman was described as it could have gone to either one of those guys. That this magazine article had said that the real Voinovich looked like. I don't know.
Well, and the thing is too, if you look up the photos and stuff from the real bank robbery, there are some moments
that are right out of this movie, him standing with his hand on the door, standing right outside the door, pointing at something,
and it looks just like him.
Yep.
And so it's one of those cases of life emulating the movies, or the movies emulating life.
It's a circle.
One of those secular moments where
it's art imitates life, imitates art, imitates life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or the other way around. Life imitates art, imitates life.
So we're at the point where the lights have gone out, but I want to go back a bit and talk about the media.
Yeah, they kind of grab on to the Leon story and milk it immediately as a freak show.
Oh yeah, immediately. For one thing, they talk about the marriage and stuff as though they were actually married, which is impossible because in the movie he's still married to his wife. In real life, he wasn't divorced either.
They even use the terminology official ceremony.
Yeah, and it wasn't official in the real life version, and it couldn't have been official even in this movie version unless their laws are different in this movie world.
This universe?
In this movie universe? I don't think so. And also in the 70s, people might have had ceremonies, but I don't think any gay marriages were happening at all in the 70s. Nothing that was officially recognized.
Oh, no. No.
Because Maryland was the first to even officially ban gay marriage, and that was in 73.
Yeah.
And they were the first ones to even have a reason to try and ban it. And the first couple to get denied was in Minnesota in 1970. So,
well, you know what? Now that I think about it, it could be that if two men or two women walked into the county clerk and asked for a marriage license for the two of them and it was granted to them, if there was nothing in the law that said that they couldn't get married, then maybe there were official marriages.
There were? I don't know. The brief research that I did, and I granted did not do very much, but when I was looking into the 70s specifically, the first instances I was talking about were of people just getting denied, and that didn't even happen until the 70s. So, and
I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know. Something tells me that there probably were official
that just
same-sex
got through
unions.
the cracks.
Yeah.
Because there weren't laws up against them yet?
Right, because there weren't laws against it.
Okay.
Right.
Well, in any case, he was not officially married to to Aaron in reality or
Right.
in this movie, because in the movie he's still married to Angie, so he couldn't be married to
Right,
both of them,
right, of
whether
course.
whether or not.
Because either way, there were laws at this time against polygamy.
Right, of
So-
course, right. And so the reason why I'm pointing this out is because the media in this universe, in this movie world, talks about it being an official ceremony, talks about the priest who married them being defrocked after
Yeah.
their marriage, as if it was an actual marriage. And then the news reporter shows a picture of Leon in his gown, talks about the cost of the bridesmaid dresses and the gown.
Yep.
It's so unnecessary.
Well,
You
but
know?
it's all to
I mean, it's unnecessary in, like, I know why it's necessary in the movie.
right. It's necessary in the movie, but but no, you're right though that it is ultimately unnecessary because all they're doing is they're milking this as a freak show to say this guy is in here stealing from you. He's stealing your money from the bank that you use, that you go put your money in every
To do
day
things like buy bridesmaid dresses for his male
for his
friends.
male bridesmaids or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it's supposed to be. That's why money is an issue in this at all.
Right. And it's just...
Which is
just
weird
crazy.
because I didn't think Fox News existed in 1975.
I know, right? Uh-oh. You better be careful.
Come and get me, Rupert.
You work for Fox now. So.
Hey, I don't work for Fox. Not actually.
Anyway, so quotes in the media, they talk about quotes of callers saying things like calling the marriage a farce and sheer exhibitionism. And it's just, I mean, this was the moment where, for me, where I kind of hit that limit break point, and I was like, okay, do we have too many issues
Limit
going on?
break?
Yeah, I know, right. Because I was like, we've got too many issues going right now. I feel like we're going to just go out the roof at this point because we're trying to deal with so many things, and I don't remember what we're trying to deal with now. Because, okay, so we're not talking about race anymore. Okay, we're not talking about police brutality anymore, right? No, right? Okay, so now we're talking about exploitation and sensationalism in the media, and now we're talking about transgender and homosexual issues. That's fine. I just feel like it kind of bounces around a little.
Okay, so you feel like
too
this
much.
movie has an issue of focus?
Maybe with these political issues. I don't think with the characters that it has any issue of focus. I think that the characters are, that what we get from them is a complete story and it's well done. I just feel like all the political issues that we're kind of speckling this movie with, I feel like we touch on a bunch of them, and the only ones that really, really get lived all the way through are maybe police brutality and then like maybe gender and sexuality issues. But again, like I said, they kind of mess it up because they sort of make it seem like the reason he's gay is because of his wife, or at least that's a possibility.
I agree that there are a couple of missteps. There are definitely a couple of missteps in some of the themes that they're going for in this movie, some of the ideas that they're trying to get across. But I think at the end of the day, it is, as Amber said, a very personal story, and I think that comes through really well. I think that what we come to understand about Sonny as a person and where his priorities lie couldn't be clearer, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that's what really sells this movie and makes it the classic that it really is. This scene right here, the phone conversation between Sonny and Leon is all improvised, 100% improvised, and apparently this whole scene, Sidney Lumet made Al Pacino do it twice, even though he said that the first take was perfect, but he made him do it twice because he knew that doing the scene one time took a lot out of Pacino, and he wanted him to really seem like he was exhausted. So after doing this improvised scene and really wearing him out with it, he says, okay, that was perfect, but we're going to do it again because now you're really tired.
That's nice.
Yeah.
It's a nice trick. It was this scene that Voitovich referenced as being like the most powerful to him. that he felt like this was a real conversation that he might have had with Aaron. That either this scene made him cry or almost made him cry or something like that.
Yeah, and because of the way this was shot, and he just wanted to keep the cameras rolling. The cameras that they were using were only good for 10 minutes worth of footage, and while the scene edited doesn't come to 10 minutes, he didn't want to, it was improvised. He didn't have a place to cut, so he actually had 2 cameras set up ready to go, and when one camera almost ran out of film, he started the second one up to keep filming so that he could just keep the momentum going.
I have a practical question for
Okay.
you. So
I hope I can answer it.
So these 2 actors, I mean, I assume they have to be playing off of each other to get the emotion that they're getting out of this scene. So did they film this at the same time?
I'm sure they filmed it. I'm sure they filmed it at the same time. I don't know if they're using working phones or not. They might just be on, I don't know. They might be back to back or something. They might be in the same room with one another.
But we just don't see it because it's
Yeah.
cut down the middle or something like that.
Yeah, because they're on, different sets, but in the same space.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not sure. I don't know exactly how they did
Because
this.
I just can't imagine being able to get the emotion out of a scene like this that they give us
You're
if
absolutely
they weren't
right. And
actually playing off
there's
each
another
other.
scene. There's a scene earlier where Sonny comes out of after the lights go off. Is it after the lights go off? I think it's after the lights go off. Sonny comes out and he starts yelling at Moretti. And that is one of the more obviously improvised scenes, and them going back and forth and talking over each other and like responding to each other in really naturalistic ways, that there is no way they could have done it without having 2 cameras running at the same time to capture everything from both of those actors and then cutting it together. So I would imagine that something like this, they would have to do something similar. And even though they're supposed to be in different locations, the actors are more than likely occupying the same space in reality, so that they can hear each other's performances.
Yeah.
Right.
A great scene, though.
But this actually, in the original script, Sonny and Leon were supposed to have a scene outside the bank in which they had like a heartfelt goodbye, and there was going to be a kiss, right? Mm-hmm. Al Pacino refused to do the scene, claiming that it would take away from this phone conversation between Sonny and Leon. And the writer, Frank Pearson, had to make appropriate changes, and then it resulted in just like their last interaction being the telephone conversation.
Do you think that it was really just that he didn't want to kiss a guy?
I don't want to say that as though I know for sure, but that is
hard not to assume that.
It's a little suspicious. It's
pretty hard not to assume that.
It's a little bit suspicious. Like there was another thing that I read online about how Al Pacino, in order to get himself in the right headspace, like to allow him to deal with the fact that he was going to be playing a homosexual, he had to grow a mustache.
Had to grow a mustache?
Yeah. So, and they shot a couple of scenes with the mustache, and Sidney Lumet was like, this is not working. The mustache is not doing it for me. It's got to go. So I don't know if it was like, the big mustache, I don't know, was kind of, I don't know if it was like a Village People thing, but like the idea of like the gay guy with the mustache was, I guess, a thing.
Yeah, in the 70s.
So Al Pacino's like, well, if I'm going to be gay, I better grow a mustache. That's my best Al Pacino.
That was good. It was pretty good.
So I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to say anything about Al Pacino. I don't know Al Pacino.
Well, you already said it, so you can't take it back.
Okay. Well, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Be careful, because he might, not be your friend anymore.
Right. I'm sorry,
because he
Al,
totally
we're
listens to Popcorn
Because we're
Poops.
totally best friends. Popcorn Poops. So this is going to be interesting because he's just gotten off the phone with Leon, which is one of the more emotional scenes in the movie, one of the more touching scenes. And he's kind of having this little face-off with Sal right now. And that's another interesting thing about Sal is that, Sal seems to be okay with Sonny and his life and the way he does things.
But I don't think he knew.
He may not have known. I mean, it's possible that he didn't know, but in any case, they've been working together, and as soon as the news starts claiming that Sal may also be a homosexual, he's immediately like, you've got to tell them to stop doing that. I'm not a homosexual. I'm not gay. You've got to tell them to stop.
Yeah, he's really concerned about that.
And I'm just like, you're fucking homophobe.
Yeah.
You are terrified of being labeled a homosexual. And
Yeah.
Al Pacino's just like, what? Like, what does it matter what they say?
What does it matter? We're robbing a bank. We're
robbing
on
a
TV
fucking
for robbing a bank.
And you're worried that someone might think you're gay?
Yeah.
Like, what?
I think that Sal didn't know, though. I think Sal didn't know that that Sonny was gay. And I feel like Sonny calling his wife here, I think is because Sal is looking at him at that moment, and he feels like he's got to be like, I'm going to call my wife now, that that thing that I do that's not gay, the wife that I have, because remember, I also have a wife. Like,
right.
He's trying to draw attention away from the fact that he was just on the phone with his with his gay lover.
Structurally, I think that it's really good that these two phone conversations happen back to back, and that you have this conversation where he talks to someone and they are really communicating, and him and Leon aren't necessarily in a great place right now. Obviously, there's a few heated words that get exchanged between the two of them, but they have a real conversation where they're really talking to each other. And then piggyback off of that scene, which is this scene where his wife, say what you will about how she's portrayed, I think very poorly, but she's, the word is shrill. She's shrill. And you can see that he doesn't communicate with his wife like he does with Leon. And she even says that. She says you don't communicate, or we don't communicate, or something. What is the line that she says?
Yeah, something like that. We don't communicate. I don't know what it is exactly.
But she hits the nail on the head. They don't communicate because she is screaming and talking too much. And again, this kind of feeds into the harmful idea that maybe he is with his wife or he's with Leon because his wife is shrill and fat.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the misstep, but.
Well, and it's about to be blown up even more here when he steps outside and talks to his mom. He has these 3 conversations back to back: Leon, then Angie, then his mom. That's right.
And that's it. He just hangs up the phone.
Hangs up on his wife. And the thing is like, they described him as a great father. And we see him as a guy that would never do things like the thing that she says, where Angie just I don't want to say complain because that belittles it, but was upset about him saying something to her like, "Get on the ride, you fat fucking pig," or something like that, and screaming at her like that in a public place. And she was upset about that and was talking to him about it on the phone. And I was just like, wow, that's really hard for me to picture this character doing. But he yells at her on the phone, too. And I mean, honestly, besides like him trying to rile up the crowd and screaming the Attica thing and all that stuff, I don't see him yell at people like that in this movie. I don't see him be angry and mean to people like he is to his wife.
No, yeah, definitely not.
That's the only character in this movie that I think he is openly aggressive with.
So what's going on right now is that all of the lights are out, which I guess means that they've just cut the electricity because there's no air in here, and all of these people are super sweaty. And I feel like the depiction of heat in this movie, I may have mentioned it before, but I think I did. But the depiction of heat in this movie, I think, is really interesting because it is supposed to take place during the hottest days of the summer. And there's only one other movie I can think of that really nails like summer heat in the city, like asphalt heat, where the asphalt heats up and everything is just a boilerplate, like it's terrible. And that's probably Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, which actually takes place I think it says at the beginning, on the hottest day of the year. And you feel it. Like, even though these are night scenes, like, we're seeing all these night scenes.
And the thing is, outside, apparently it was cold enough at night that they had to have the actors put ice in their mouth to make sure that their breath didn't show.
Right.
When they delivered lines.
In this shot right here with the gay protesters, apparently a young Harvey Firestein can be seen in here somewhere. And I'm trying to find him. I don't know where he is. He might be that guy behind the bearded guy here.
Who's Harvey Firestein?
Very famous gay actor. He was in, I don't know. I wish I could do his voice. He kind of talks like this.
Good job.
Oh, that was terrible. But he was in Independence Day.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
was-
Between the voice and then that comment.
Yeah, and he was also in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes, yeah.
He plays the.
He was in Independence Day with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, that's right, with Jeff Goldblum. Man. That's right. But yeah, apparently there was an uncredited Harvey Firestein in that shot right there, and I wish I could find him. I think he's in the back somewhere, but yeah, he's a pretty.
It couldn't have
hilarious
been the
man.
bearded man, could it have? Just a younger version of him?
No, I don't think so.
No?
No, I would have recognized him. I think he was in the back. I really like this moment here where they mention that their manager said the F word, and it's such a big deal. And that's another thing. Cursing in this movie, there's a statement on like the censorship of language and how language is used, and how like when Sonny is doing the phone interview with the TV and he's live on television and they're talking about like, you know, these issues. He's talking about trying to find a job and how he can't find a job without a union card. And then the police, or not the police officer, the news anchor. What's the difference really? the news anchor asks, you know, what about non-union jobs? And they're having this very important conversation about very important issues. And because Sonny says the word fuck,
He gets shut off the
he
air.
gets shut off the air just because of a word.
Yeah.
There's another moment earlier where the chief teller.
It says to Sonny that he needs to watch his language because there are young women around.
Yeah. And I don't know.
And then the manager comes in and apologizes to the women.
He apologizes to the women
because of his language, and they're all like, "What?
They're
what are you
oblivious.
talking about?
They're
what
like,
was
"We
the
didn't
language
hear
that?" And then someone's like, "Oh, he said fuck.
Yeah.
Like he said the F word."
Carol Kane's like, the F word. And then one of the other women like whispers it to the other girl, and she's like, fuck. And she's like, I know what it is, Mary. I know. And then one of the other women's like,
Gets upset about
upset.
it.
She's like, I'm a Christian and my ears aren't dumpsters. And she walks away and they all laugh. That's a really great, like, human moment. And
It is because
I really love that.
because the way, like, the importance that we put onto these words that are just words. You know, like, I mean, even our podcast, we've got the little explicit logo next to our.
We do, because sometimes we say the fuck word.
Sometimes, just like now, we just said the fuck word, and it's just so crazy to me how much importance we put onto just words that
Just
in another
words.
language
mean
nothing.
Yeah. So this scene right here, we've got the scene between Sonny and Sonny's mother. This is the scene that I helped reshoot.
This is the scene. Okay.
This is the scene that I helped reshoot for my one of those college classes.
The one with
I think
his
it was
mother.
directing for the camera. The one with his mother.
Oh, and that's the scene where I was talking about, where I take the most issue with, like, the comments about his wife and stuff, because I really feel like the mom here is pressuring him. The mom hates his wife, clearly,
Right.
and she's blaming all, I think, his sexuality on his wife. And also, I hate it when she.
I don't mind that these characters think that way. I don't mind that his mother
right.
thinks that way, because that's how people probably would think.
And that's the character
What
thinking that way.
What I need is Sonny to refute it.
Right. I need Sonny to refute it. I need a contradictory opinion stated in the movie.
I need Sonny to say, no, she has nothing to do with this. This is who I am. This is how I am. It doesn't have to be that, front facing and blatant, but it has to get across.
Yeah.
He has to refute it, and he doesn't.
And that's why it's a problem, is because it leaves the audience then with no other point to establish themselves and to go, okay, which way is the person who made this movie, whether we consider that the director or the script writer or whoever it is, who this is their opinion, which way are we supposed to face with this? And we don't really know where to go because Sonny doesn't refute it. And that kind of leaves you dangling in this area where it's like, okay, so everybody's been saying this one thing and he's not saying that's not the case. So
like, does he
maybe
not have an opinion? So
if
he's not refuting it, does that mean it's true? Is that what the movie's trying to tell us? Which can't be the case.
I don't think it is the case. The mom also, the other thing I hate about the scene is just the fact that she's blaming this sexuality, I think, on the physical appearance of his wife. And God, I hate it when women subject themselves or each other to being valued based on their physical appearance, that she would allow another woman to be valued based on her sexual appeal to a man.
Yeah.
And I mean, that has, again, it has to do with my dislike of the character's personality, not like a fault of the movie. But
Right. I mean, again, these characters can have regressive opinions because people have regressive opinions.
Right, but again, we don't have the women's lib movement portrayed
exactly.
in here. So when I have an issue like that, when I take issue with the fact that we've got women valuing each other on their sexual appeal to men during the 1970s, and we don't have one of these many, many, many women in this movie stating something, doing something that goes counter to that,
you're absolutely right.
It's hard to swallow it.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that is a misstep in the ideas that this movie is trying to get across. So Judith Malina, who played Sonny's mom in this, she actually portrayed Grandmama in The Addams Family, the first movie.
Okay.
And then in the sequel, Addams Family Values, she was recast with Carol Kane.
Really?
Yes.
Well, look at that little tie-in.
That's kind of fun, isn't it? There's another weird one here. That one of the women. Oh, is her name Miriam or Miriam or something like that? I'm trying to Miriam maybe.
I think it's Miriam. You're talking about one of the characters in the movie, right?
Yeah, she has like the afro hair.
I think her name is Miriam.
She has the floofy head. Anyway, she plays. The actress's name is Marsha Jean Kurtz, and she plays a bank robbery victim in this named Miriam. And then like 31 years later, she played another bank robbery hostage named Miriam in a movie called Inside Man.
Really?
Directed by Spike Lee, who I've also mentioned on this podcast.
Interesting.
As well. So yeah, there's just some random trivia. Do you have any random trivia?
No, I told you my random trivia. That was the one with the ice, where the actors had to have ice in their mouths when they went outside.
What kind of trivia do I have? I'm sure I've got something interesting. Oh yeah, the Attica. That was voted as the number 86 movie quote by the American Film Institute out of 100.
Really?
Number 86. That's right. Frank Pearson, the writer of this, wanted to interview Voitovich, but he wasn't able to do that because Voitovich couldn't reach an agreement with Voitovich on how much he should be paid for his story.
Yes, and that I'm glad you mentioned that, because of all my talking about Voitovich and like his complaints about the movie, the things he thought were done well and the things he thought were done poorly, the fact is that his opinion really doesn't matter that much because he had the opportunity. The screenwriter wanted to get the facts right. The screenwriter wanted to bring it closer to reality. But Voitovich wouldn't meet with him. He said he went to the prison many times trying to meet with Voitovich, and Voitovich just wasn't having any of it because he was being, stuck about the money. He was stuck on the money, and he wasn't going to help them any more than he already was. So it's kind of his own fault that things turned out the way they did in the movie. In the cases where he felt like they were portrayed incorrectly, it's kind of, he's the one to be blamed for it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's true for the whole movie, but I do understand that a lot of this movie was lit naturally, with just the natural, like all of the stuff in the bank when the lights were, especially when the lights were on, there were no movie lights. It was just all fluorescent light that was inside the bank.
Well, a bank is definitely a place where you can get away with that because banks are so well lit.
Yeah, but like it's all top lighting. And that's
And that's something I don't know anything about. So that can be a problem then.
It can, and I mean it definitely affects your color temperature. Like, fluorescent light is extremely it's neutral, but I think that there's a coldness to it. It's not actually, the color temperature is not technically a cold color temperature, but it is. I don't know. There's something that's very dead about it to me.
Yeah.
There's no warmth to it, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably intentional. I think that obviously Lumet wanted to depict a situation that had a kind of a sterile feeling, like the bank has because places like that do. I think that's another good way to describe it. Fluorescent lighting is sterile.
Yeah, it's a hospital light. It's a bank light, a elementary school classroom light.
I hate it. I hate fluorescent lighting so much.
Yeah, we're those people who, when you come over to our house, if you were sitting here watching the movie with us, then we have lamps on. We only do lamps. Like whenever we have overhead fluorescent lights in our house, they never ever get used.
Oh, never.
And then when people come over and they don't know that and they turn on the light, we're like, oh,
why are you doing that?
Don't do that.
There's only like one place where fluorescent light is okay, and that's like the kitchen, maybe.
The bathroom
maybe.
sometimes.
Sometimes the bathroom. But in living spaces or in bedroom, no, thank you. Just overhead lighting in general, even if it's like a warm incandescent light, I don't know, I can't do it. That's why that if I ever get to make a movie myself, it's probably going to be extremely warm because I just love warm lighting, like the orange glow of lamplight. It's my favorite. So, yeah, you can look forward to that. Why are you smiling at me?
So this character here, the limousine driver. I guess he's meant to actually be a cop, right?
Yes, he is. And I'm not sure what actually tips him off, what tips Sonny off, because you've got this guy that pulls up in the airport shuttle, and he's telling him about, like, he says the airport guys told him to gas up one of the stretches and bring it out there, and it's like, you're the guy though, like we're hearing about you on TV and whatever. And when the FBI agent says that he wants his other agent guy to drive the car, Al Pacino's like, no, I want this guy. I want the black guy, is what he says. And then I guess at some point he realized that the black guy is a cop.
I was quiet then because I was watching and trying to see if I could tell the moment where he realized.
I was too. I was like, is this it? Is this the moment?
Is it this right there? I felt like it was the moment when this character, when the head FBI guy kind of looks at him and nods, looks at Al Pacino's character and kind of nods to him and is like, yeah, take the black driver. Yes, that's the thing that I want you to do. And that's the moment where he's like, oh, you want me to do this, so definitely the limousine driver is also a cop. You're trying to play me by putting a black person in here who we already saw you do something. Like, we had that moment at the beginning where they assumed the black guy was the bank robber, and so I guess he thought maybe the cops were playing off of that attitude. And so they sent someone who he would think wouldn't be a cop because of his skin color. And, it actually is a cop. So, I don't know. I guess that's what they were going for. I was kind of confused by the scene, though, because at the end of it, I'm like 99% sure he's a cop.
The two black characters in this movie are both profiled.
Yes, that's true.
They're both profiled in some capacity.
Well, the guy who delivered pizza was black, too, wasn't he?
Oh, was he?
I think so.
Okay, maybe. I think he was Hispanic.
Okay. Well, he was not white.
Not white.
Anyways, though, so the limousine driver, though, was I don't know. It was just a weird moment for me because I wasn't sure exactly when Sonny realized that he was a cop and that he was being played. And then I kind of felt maybe he was overreacting. Like, I even got the impression that maybe he's just at the peak of his anxiety and that actually it isn't a cop. Actually, it is just a limousine driver, but he's so anxious and crazy right now that he assumes everything is a con, everything is a setup.
I mean, he says it constantly. It might as well be his mantra throughout this movie is "Don't con me."
Yeah.
Don't con me. Don't fuck me over.
Yeah.
You know.
But then see when he's standing right there, the limousine driver, and he
once
has the jacket off and stuff.
He's got the jacket, or he's got the white jacket off, and he's put a black jacket on.
The
and
white
he's wearing,
like jumpsuit thing.
Yeah, and he's wearing a necktie now. It's like, okay, I guess he was a cop.
I guess so.
I don't know, the way he kind of walks away sheepishly toward the car when Al Pacino initially says, I want you. Mm-hmm. And what was it that he says? He's like, if you shoot, aim for white meat or something like that. I don't know. I guess the moment that the FBI allowed it to happen, he was like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's what I thought too.
This moment right here is so full of tension where they're like in this huddle and they're getting closer and closer to the car so they can get in without issue, without being shot or whatever they think is going to happen.
And when they're trying to get into the car, and I don't understand why they have the doors open on the other side still.
Yeah, I don't either.
Because
I thought about that too.
Because I feel like if I were Sonny, then I would want those doors to already be closed. See, and they make such a big deal out of like getting into the car and stuff, and then like the FBI agent goes and closes the doors for them and everything. It's just, I think this is the point in the movie where, being someone who had never seen the movie before, of course I didn't believe that they would let them fly away in a jet to a foreign country, but because it's based off of a true story. But the whole movie I spent my time trying to decide, like, where is the moment where he passes the point of like sane judgment, like it's got to be here where he knows this isn't going to happen, right? Because he's an intelligent character. He's able to see through their bullshit. He's able to, even just from the beginning when they set it up with the alarm stuff, where he's able to look at the key and everything and know which ones are going to get him in trouble and how to get out of the situation safely. He's an intelligent character, and I have to believe that he doesn't believe that they're going to get out of this anymore.
So I have to ask, have they just given up on the money? Because there's a moment when Sonny puts the bag of money, it's really early on, just after he's received whatever money they've got in the bank, he puts the money down, and that's the last we see of it. Have they given up on the money? Is their goal to just get out of this situation now?
I think their goal is just to get out of the situation, but I don't know if they brought the bag of money into the car or not. I feel like they did. I feel like they brought it. I mean, it would be stupid not to bring it with them at this point.
Yeah,
if they're thinking it at all. And like I said, I feel like he is a smart character. I don't feel like he's a dumb character. He's got to know that it's not going to happen, that they're not really going to get on a plane and have someone fly them to another country.
Yeah, and there's this moment right here. They're pulling out, and we're going to get some shots of them driving through the city. And I think it's really interesting that a lot of these shots, they make it look, and especially like the wagon itself, like the wagon that they're in, which is like the stretch airport
Limo,
shuttle.
bus,
It's
van thing.
Some kind of airport
They
shuttle
keep calling
bus.
it a limousine.
They keep calling it a limousine because it's, long. But just the shape of the car and the fact that they're all driving in a line, it looks like a funeral procession.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that's foreshadowing. It's absolutely intentional. There will be a death before all of this is done. But there is like this idea of foreboding and the death in this movie, where you've got Sonny who's constantly saying, I'm dying. I'm dying. And you've even got characters who tell it, who repeat it back to him, who say that, when he says it to Leon, and it kind of defines his relationship between Leon and his wife, Angela. When he says, I'm dying, Leon's like, you're always saying that. You're always saying you're dying, you're dying, you're dying. Well, maybe you're not dying. Maybe you're killing the people around you.
Yeah.
Which is really poignant. That shot right there that we just had, I think there might be another one. To me, it looks like a funeral procession.
Yeah.
And then he says the same thing to his wife, Angie. And when he says, I'm dying to Angie, she doesn't respond to it. She just talks right over him. She just keeps talking. It helps to redefine the boundaries of their
Why is he
relationships.
saying this? Why does he think he's dying? What is this about his character that he thinks he's dying?
I don't know. I don't know. Something about the fear fear of his own mortality or something like that. And then there's that whole scene where he dictates his will. He dictates his will and has it written down by one of the bank tellers. And, he leaves, I guess you couldn't say that he leaves most of his stuff to Leon, but Leon comes first. He says that he leaves everything, he leaves what he's going to leave to Leon first so that Leon can have the sex change operation. And then he leaves, stuff to Angie and then to his kids.
In reality, this movie paid for the sex change operation. That's what actually paid for it. Was the money he got from this movie, the money that Voitovich got from this movie being made.
It was like $7,500 and then 1% of the movie's profits, I think.
That's what afforded him.
If you can get a percentage of the profits on anything like this, that's a great deal. I don't know how he worked that out.
But yeah, that's what actually paid for the sex change. So,
but yeah, there is definitely an irony to what we will come to see soon is Sal's death. Sal will die in this kind of final exchange here, and there is an irony to that since Sonny is the one who's constantly talking about his own mortality and kind of dwelling on that, right?
And the fact that it's the people around him that die, not him. Sal, who got dragged into this, who he promised Sal that they were getting out of this or they were killing themselves. That's what he told Sal.
Yes.
And
Sal kind of wanted, it seemed like Sal wanted to live by that.
Yeah, it did. It seemed like he kind of wanted to die. And maybe this has something to do with the Vietnam vet experience. It has something to do with that.
But you said something to me earlier about, how Sal said that he's never been on an airplane before.
Mm-hmm. And I found out that, so my comment was, Sal kept saying he had never been on an airplane before, but then, he's a veteran in this movie. And so I'm thinking, how did he get to Vietnam? And so I went online and it seemed that other people had addressed the same thing and had claimed that maybe he wasn't really a vet, but there are moments in the movie where they explicitly state that both of them are veterans. Mm-hmm. I think he is supposed to be a veteran. I guess we're just going to assume that he went to Vietnam by boat or something.
Okay. That'd be a long trip.
That's what we're just going to assume.
So this jet that is pulled up here, the jet that's supposed to take them away to Algeria or wherever that they've decided to go. Mm-hmm. Algeria's in like North Africa. Why would they go there? Isn't it?
I don't know why they would go to Algeria. I'm not sure why they would go. I think they just picked it on a whim. Oh, and I totally missed like a moment that I wanted to mention with Leon when he was on the phone. And what did Leon say? Leon made like a passively derogatory comment about Islam.
Oh, okay. What did he
say? When they were talking about Algeria, he was like, they walk around, they got those things on your head. You could have picked a better place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Those things on their heads. They got those things on their head. And Algeria is like a predominantly Islamic country.
Right. So the jet that pulled up that's supposed to take them away is a Convair CV990 that's operated by Modern Air. Modern Air is written on the side. And Modern Air is actually an airline that went out of business in 1975, the same year this movie was released.
Oh, interesting.
The same exact thing happened to Pan Am after being featured in the movie Hook in 1991. It went out of business the same year that it was featured in the movie Hook. And we've covered both of those movies at this point on Popcorn Poops.
Weird. So I love the fact that Sal is conditioned at this point, that the FBI agent has told him so many times to keep his gun up, mm-hmm. that Sal now just does it instinctively, even in a moment where he shouldn't keep his gun up.
Right, where it's not conducive to, it doesn't behoove him to keep it up.
They're not, like when they were driving, it makes sense because if he accidentally shoots the guy while they're driving, then, they're all going to wreck and die. But they aren't driving, they're sitting there. It's the most important moment where they get out of the car and Sal has been conditioned because the FBI agent keeps telling him to put his gun up, that when he says, keep your gun up, we don't want anything to happen, Sal puts his gun up, and that leads to the moment where he gets shot in the head and wraps up the movie. I also like the instance where Maria gives him rosary beads.
Yeah.
get on the plane because he's never been on the plane before and she doesn't want him to be scared.
Yeah. It's a good moment.
The hostages, the real hostages from this real robbery, talk about how they connected with the robbers. That
They said it was the most hilarious time that they had. They just had a bunch of laughs and
that if they had been entertaining them at home, it would have been fantastic. That they were nice people, and we always refer to like the psychological issues that people have when they associate with their kidnappers and stuff like that. But I think in this case, I mean, the big thing was that, at least for Sonny, that he was not a bad guy.
Right.
Though
he did it for someone that he loved.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did hear that actually the real robbery was actually a mafia thing gone poorly.
Oh, really?
That somehow it
that.
was connected to like the Italian mafia or something, and it had gone poorly.
The real robbers actually got, well, I guess they didn't get it because they were caught, but they had actually collected $213,000 in the robbery. So a lot more than they seem to have gotten in the movie.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And man, in the 70s, $213,000 in the 70s.
That's like $1 billion.
They keep saying on the apron here in this scene. The cops keep saying on the apron.
If you work at an airport, please let us know what that means.
Or it could be, I was assuming it was police terminology.
I don't know, but are there Ghostbusters there? That looked like the Ecto-1.
Yeah, well, that's because they took an old, like,
hearse?
But, I mean...
So, Wurtzig. Sonny Wurtzig is serving 20 years in federal prison. He actually, the real Voidovich only served 5 of his 20-year sentence.
Because of parole. But then he got put back in.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, for breaking his parole and stuff.
Okay. Well,
and then he got out again and was living with his mom, I think, when he died in 2006.
So, widely regarded as one of the greatest American movies ever made, Dog Day Afternoon. Kind of the best of a genre, a certain kind of genre.
Final thoughts?
Very human movie, wrapped in a political crust. Mm-hmm. I think it's very powerful. There are a couple of missteps here and there. Narratively, I don't think there are missteps, but I think it's all. I think it's all thematic. I think it's all in the messages in the metaphors that it tries to draw.
And again, I don't know. It's hard to even call them missteps because we're putting these missteps into the mouths of characters and not necessarily into the mouths of the creators. And I think the misstep is even more complex than just like the issue about the mom and stuff. I think that the issue is that we didn't have a counter opinion to that.
Right.
So
I agree, but great movie. I still think it's a great movie, eminently watchable, and highly recommended to anybody who hasn't seen it yet. That is going to wrap us up for this episode of Popcorn Poops, the first episode of our listener request month. As always, you can find us on our website at popcornpoops.com. You can follow us on Twitter at popcornpoops, like us on Facebook, just search for us on there. Please subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher. You can leave us a rating and review on there. If you write us a review, we will read it on the show. And then, of course, there's our forums. You can go to our forums at popcornpoops.com, sign up there, and join the conversation. There's some great conversations going on, and we want you to be part of them. If you want to support our show, please visit audibletrial.com/popcornpoops. You can sign up for free for a 30-day trial of their audiobook subscription service, and you'll get an audiobook that's yours to keep forever, no matter what. If you decide to continue with the service after the trial has expired, or not, you still get to keep that audiobook. So there's no losing for you, and that really helps us out. Every week on Popcorn Poops, we like to highlight a friend of the show, another podcast or web show, and we call it our Popcorn Poops Podcasting Pal. This week, the Popcorn Poops Podcasting Pal is the Soiled Restroom Cinema Podcast, which is perfect for being friends with the Popcorn Poops. we popcorn poops it, and they flush it down the
it's
soil.
fine. Just
I'm trying really hard. they're going to be giving us a few words after the show, so stick around for that. If you're interested in becoming a Popcorn Poops podcasting pal, if you have a web show or a podcast and you want to be featured like this, send us a private message on our social media outlets or by sending us an email to thepopcornpoops@gmail.com. That's thepopcornpoops@gmail.com. And next week, what are we watching, Jessica?
Next week, we'll be watching Henry Selick's 1993 film, The Nightmare Before Christmas. And if you have any comments or questions you want us to cover in that episode, please be sure to contact us through social media.
Should be a good one, if a little early for both holidays featured in that film.
That's true, but the voicemail was just too great to not play.
Yes, I very much look forward to playing the voicemail for you next week. So stick around for that. Stay tuned, and we'll be looking forward to that. So until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
We are the Popcorn Poops.
Hey there, movie fans. This is Honor Knight, your head cinematic flusher from the award-winning Soiled Restroom Cinema podcast. Each week on SRC, myself and co-cinematic flushers Congo Rilla and Natalie Grace scour the bowels of Netflix, Vudu, Amazon Instant Video, and YouTube to bring you the absolute worst in streaming movies that Hollywood has to offer. So when you're done pooping in your popcorn, head on over to signalsoffury.com and listen to us play with some cinematic turds for a while. We're here to flush it, so you don't have to see it.